Now, here's a question which is personal to me, and I'm not going to get upset by it, but just have a reflect on this. Could your next lawyer be a robot? It sounds pretty far-fetched, a bit like sort of Tomorrow's World, but artificial intelligence programs that can update and think for themselves are apparently already being used in America to draft legal letters and provide legal advice. So where is all this going to take us? And what other professions could be at risk? Are we going to have doctors and surgeons just be robots? Could the person, just serving you, could a vet be a robot? Here to talk to us is a man who apparently could see into the future. Now, I wanted Steve, my producer, who you met earlier, Brokeback Mountain, and I wanted Tom, I'm going to say One Direction. I wanted boy band Tom to get me someone who could see into the future, but sadly Mystic Meg wasn't available, although when we telephoned her, she knew it was me on the phone, obviously. So instead we do have the chairman of 2030 Plus Futures Forum, Mal Fletcher. Mal, help us out here. I've got very strong opinions about whether it's wise for artificial intelligence to act as judges and lawyers. What do you think?
Well, Rob, I think it's a mixed bag. I think there are definitely areas of caution here when it comes to ethics. We need some global guidelines on developing AI with ethics built into it. Look, it all started a few years ago with actually a British-American entrepreneur called Joshua Browder. Some of your listeners might be familiar with him. He invented what they called then the world's first robotic lawyer. It was actually a chatbot, which is a piece of software that we communicate on the computer with in fairly fluid human-like ways. It was designed to help people contest parking tickets, but now it's used to refund flight tickets, to apply for asylum in various countries, to even help people with US visas.
But just to be clear, because I never heard of this person, and I suspect some of my listeners and viewers may not know who this person is. He invented a technology that provides pro formas. In other words, you type in whatever your needs are, and then it generates out the other side a letter. Is that it?
Pretty much. I mean, it's very good at the procedural level of legal practice, drafting letters, research, writing reports. It's not yet very adept when it comes to cases involving multi-layered human or ethical situations. After all, the one thing robots can't do is empathize. Empathy requires a shared human experience, the use of our imaginations and experience to help us understand someone else's position.
Well, that's precisely the point, Mal, because in this country and America and in Australia, where I suspect, but I'm not sure where you're from, it looks like you're in Oxfordshire. As you know, we have jury trials, and it's really, in many cases, ordinary people who comprise those juries, are making human determinations. These days, one of the worries that I have, and many practitioners have, and I have to tell you many judges will privately express, is that they are forced to sentence people, based on very strict guidelines. I was in court not that long ago where a judge said it's like picking a sentence from a computer. But there are a whole range of different factors as to why people commit crime, a whole range of different circumstances. You can think, for example, in a criminal offence, as whether or not somebody was acting in self-defence, whether somebody was provoked, which would reduce an offence from murder to manslaughter. All of that is human behaviour. Do you think there's ever going to be a time, ever, when software or AI is going to be able to sufficiently mimic our human empathy?
I don't think, well, let me say, first of all, I don't think technology is the problem. And this is what you're suggesting. It's not tech that's the problem. It's how we choose to use it. We are the moral agents making the choices. And I think it's worth remembering in reference to that artificial intelligence is just that. It is artificial. Neuroscientists and technologists agree even now that we haven't come anywhere near being able to emulate the function of a human brain. I mean, AI can do some fairly amazing things, but it can't yet display what is technically called artificial general intelligence. It's good at thinking in straight lines. It can't carry out multiple complex tasks at once most of the time. So yes, there are areas where we need caution, but I think we need to also be careful we're not over anxious about the technology. There are limits with it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there'll ever be a time when it's able to, the AI is able to think like a human being and to have empathy and the full panoply of human emotions?
I doubt it, because I think, well, by definition, it's not a human being. So having human emotions would seem to be a contradiction in terms for a machine. I think it will be able to emulate empathy, if you like to fake it. In fact, care bots can do that now in aged care homes in Japan. They can fake caring for people. But people still know, even though they enjoy that, they still know that it's not the real thing. There's something therapeutic about talking to another human being and having a human being take time to solve your problem.
I don't know what a care bot is, Mal. What's a care bot?
A care bot's basically a small robotic machine, sometimes just in the shape of a furry animal, sometimes in a more of a robotic shape, that can, as I say, emulate emotion, respond with a smiley face if necessary, with a frowny face if necessary, even more complex emotions, but they're not the real thing, are they?
In terms of other professions, Mal, you know, you think about surgery and those sorts of scenarios. Don't you think that AI moving forward is increasingly going to be used? Certainly in the medical field, it's being used diagnostically to great effect.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not suggesting that AI shouldn't be used. I'm a futurist. I think we should embrace the best of the technology, but we should be aware of the limitations and make sure that we remain the master, not the servant. And that is our choice. In journalism, software like the Quill program is already being used to write articles or parts of articles for major magazines with little or no human input. In medicine, as you say, nurses and doctors increasingly will offer medical advice and follow-up with the help of apps and smart wearable devices. In time, we know that it's likely biochips and nanobots will be able to send messages from inside the human body to remote computers. And that can all be very helpful. But we're not talking here about, I think, machines taking over the process. I think the human agency will still be central.
You know, Mal, lots of people worry about this. They see a dystopian vision, like an Aldous Huxley sort of nightmare, especially when you talk about chips in people's bodies and that sort of thing. To that extent, if you were to set out, despite being a futurist, the real dangers that there might be in artificial intelligence, if you were to be writing that horror novel, but nevertheless basing it on your real experience and expertise, what is the worst case scenario here?
Well, one of the worst things that could happen is that we see too many jobs ceded to AI too quickly. So we end up with unemployment and, just as dangerous, underemployment. We expect already something like 800 million jobs to be automated, Rob, in the next 20 years, including, according to a House of Lords report, 35% of British jobs. Now, it's true that new technologies in history have always brought about new forms of work. But the question for us this time will be, how quickly can we transition, not just to a new job several times in our careers, but to entirely new livelihoods? So we're going to need, right from the time we're in school, to be learning problem solving and anxiety management and transition skills. We're going to need to see universities combining the STEM and the art subjects into a more holistic type of a course that combines the best of those worlds. Today, 40% of STEM-related jobs in parts of the UK are unfilled because people lack those skills. But it's also true most people are not trained in innovation skills or releasing their innate creativity. So we're going to need a lot of education to help us transition more quickly.
Mal Fletcher, looking into the future, as I said, you know, I wanted a futurist. If somebody could actually see into the future, but all turns out you can do is predict it. It's a pity, because otherwise I'd ask you for the lottery numbers. Looking forward to 2030, how do you see AI being used within our society here in the UK and globally? What do you see as the best of it? The upside?
Well, the upside isn't so difficult to predict. I mean, we will fairly soon now be living in, or many of us will anyway, in cities or parts of cities that we can truly call smart cities. Smart buildings, truly smart buildings that are not just where we're using an app to control the gas supply or something, but where buildings become self-sustaining hydroponic farms, walls that built of materials that breathe to keep us warm or cool, windows that change reflectivity according to the levels of sunlight available, all driven by apps and wearable devices. So there's a lot of good things coming with AI. I've already mentioned some of the medical side. We have remote surgeries too now. All of that's good. We just need to keep an eye on who is the master in the situation.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's difficult to keep control of that. And of course, the real worry is that this is the opening of Pandora's box. Do you think to some extent the planting of chips in human bodies is, if you like, the kind of next stage, albeit speeding it up considerably, of human evolution?
I don't think it's a necessary step. That's the honest answer. I don't favour it myself because I think as soon as we do that, we've crossed the line a little bit too much between human and machine. What fascinates me is that we complain that we now are, too hackable or trackable in terms of our privacy, but that will go up 100% when we start implanting things into human bodies. There are employment agencies now, or networks of businesses in Sweden and in the States, that are insisting their employees have RFIDs, radio frequency ID tags, that's like a microchip in their skin, usually in their arm. They say that they give great efficiencies of service because you can open the door.
Can I just stop you for a second?
Yep.
Forgive me, it's the last question before the break. I'm really surprised. I consider myself to be pretty informed, like our listeners and viewers. They're people that watch and listen to everything. I'm shocked. Mal, I'm really shocked. Are you telling me there are businesses in Sweden and America where in order to work there, you have to be implanted with a human chip?
Well, they're requesting that workers do that. And they do it. What sounds like a good argument. They say, well, it's very convenient. You can order your lunch using this and pay for it in the canteen.
Well, no, hang on. Just sorry I keep getting accused of interrupting people, but I haven't got time to get the story. But I need to know. I'm about to go and research this, and I'm horrified. Are they requesting it, or are they making it a term of employment?
Well, most of them are requesting it, but fairly strongly suggesting you do it. And I think that's the problem.
Right.
It's not very big jump from requesting it to insisting upon it.
Without naming a company, Mal, just give me an idea. What you get this chip implanted in you, and then what? Then what do the employers track?
Well, they don't necessarily use it to track you. They could do that, but they say they're trying to make the workplace smoother, more convenient, more economical. Because you can run machinery without having to turn anything on. You just wave your hand. That's the argument. I'm not saying that it holds
right. No,
up.
I understand.
I think that the data will be used because it's too much of a temptation not to use it. But I think what ends up happening is that we cede control over too much of our freedom. Yeah. It's not widespread in America. It's not widespread in Sweden.
No, I understand it's not widespread, but it only takes one company for it to work, and then all of a sudden everybody's walking around with a barcode on their bottom or hand. It's a pretty frightening view of the future, it seems to me. And you seem to be agreeing with me too.
Yeah, I don't find that comfortable at all. In fact, one of the reasons I've done so much media on cashlessness is that's the next stage of cashlessness in a logical sequence of events.
Right, so no cards. It's not going to be banging cards. You're going to have a chip in your body and you'll be able to wave your thumb. And you don't think that's a good idea. A lot of our listeners will be worried about that. Why should we be?
Well, as I said, for one thing, we become, your smartphone is trackable, it's hackable, but you can leave it in the bedroom drawer. You can't do that with a chip in your skin. Also, someone can steal my cash without doing me physical injury, or even my card, but they can't do that with an implanted subcutaneous chip. They have to do me some sort of violence to get at it. I've
got Steve going mad inside because one of the things he's concerned about, and I can understand why. I got my mobile phone mugged off me the other week by a collection of idiots. But it's one thing to steal someone's card. We could find ourselves in a situation where people are slicing each other's hands off to get to their chips, right? Is that right?
Well, that's the point. If it's under your skin, you have to gouge it out in some way, right? And so we end up with all sorts of, and cash doesn't carry any data, but these chips do. And so once your ID becomes open to theft at a whole new level, simply because we've decided to, for what seemed like a good reason in the first place, to cede part of our humanity to technology.
So we really need good ethical committees and good controls and regulators who are informed, with people on them like you that know what they're talking about, to ensure that this is ethically led, right?
Yeah, we need some global ethical guidelines. It really needs to be a national, but also a global conversation to steer the development of AI. We need to think about things like means versus ends, whether we're actually building faster machines, as one philosopher put it, to take us absolutely nowhere. We need to think about the line between human and machine. Have we crossed that line? How close are we to it?
Right.
Are we blurring the line too much? We need ethics, not just pragmatism, which says if a thing can be done, it should be done.
Well, I have to say, Mal Fletcher, this has been absolutely fascinating and terrifying. When I said to Steve and Tom I wanted a futurist on, I thought I was going to get somebody who's going to be reading the tea leaves. I almost wish I had now, because you've made me both interested, engaged, but also a little bit frightened of the future. That being said, I am hopeful that there are people like you out there that at least know what they're talking about. That was Mal Fletcher. Go and study more. I mean, would you like a chip under your skin?